you so much for joining in. Please, favor, I would like to request that if it's possible for you to still send a message to some of your co-mentees so that we can have a full class. Right. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dennis Williams, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Our topic for today is Metaverse. So, not to waste any time, right? I'll just quickly just get into the announcements for today. So, the announcement for today is that registration, like we've earlier said, for the next quarter of mentorship is ongoing. Our courses available for mentorship is blockchain, NFT and metaverse, intellectual property, artificial intelligence and technology, data privacy and technology, health tech and law, um, health tech and law, the energy industry, the fintech industry, and patent drafting and a handful of other courses at alternative dispute resolution. These are some of what we Gypsy have to offer, and we look forward to having our mentees that are currently here share with their colleagues, their co-students, for those that are still students, their families, relatives, just anybody that they can reach out to about this session. That there's a lot going on here in terms of learning and what is to be gained in terms of knowledge as regards the particular sphere that they'll be registering for. They'll be registering for. And not to waste any further time, we are supposed to have two mentors on call today. Firstly, we have Ms. Buki Ogosakin. She doesn't need any further introduction. She has been with us coming straight from week one. Thank you so much, my dear, for joining. And we are supposed to have Mr. George on call. I don't know if he will be available, right? But I don't know if he will be available, but I trust he will be joining us shortly. So once again, we are welcome to today's session, and my name is Dennis Williams. I'll be your moderator. Just to get started on today's session, we would just like to hear from Ms. Buki. Um, we'd just like to hear from Ms. Buki. Our topic for today is um, Metaverse. And okay, last week we were supposed to have a discourse on NFTs, and we couldn't have that. So we just want to see if it's going to be possible for our mentor to just help us run through both simultaneously, if that would be possible, both NFTs, non fungible tokens, and Metaverse. So, Ma, you're welcome once again. Thank you for joining in. We'd just like to have you help introduce the session to us. What's NFTs and what is the Metaverse space like, Ma? You're welcome, Ma.
All right, thank you so much. I have to apologize for the background noise. It's Good Friday, so there's a lot of activity going on. Yes, so good evening, all. It's awesome to be here again today. I'd like to thank the entire team of JIIPCC for having me here today. It's an honor and it's an area that I'm very passionate about, which is the reason why I'm here today. And so creating more awareness and education in the space of emerging technologies is generally something that I would like to be part of. So having said that, I also like to congratulate the mentees as well, because trying to learn within the space is also very, very, very important and very, very noble. And so I'll just, try to appreciate you guys for all that you're doing right now, even though there's a lot more work to be done. Yes, so I just want to go straight into NFTs and the metaverse. Last week we were supposed to take NFTs. Apologies, I was at the Nigerian Bar Association, the Women's Forum, taking a session there. I anticipated it to be just an hour or two, but it ended up being a whole day session. So that's why I wasn't able to make it back on time. And the traffic was bad also coming back. I hope I'm still connected. Am I connected?
Yes, Ma, we can hear you, Ma.
Okay. So I'll just try and take the two together and speak a bit about NFTs and then also about the metaverse as well. So when we're talking about NFTs, I don't know if I should share a slide here if I have enough time to do that. Let me see, 1 second, please. I have so many now. Okay, so let me try and share my slides. To allow me. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to take it slide by slide because we don't have that much time. But when we're talking about NFTs are non-fungible tokens, right? And so there are different types of NFTs that we have. We have ERC20 tokens. We have ERC, second, please. Let's see. Okay. So we have ERC20 tokens, ERC721 tokens, and then 1155. There are many more tokens that we have, but these are the most popular. ERC20 tokens are just they refer to fungible tokens. And so those are the ones that we're, critically aware of. Those are the Bitcoin, the Ethereums, and the like. They're fungible because they are exchangeable one for another. And then we have ERC 721 tokens, which are non-fungible tokens, which refer to NFTs. These are the ones that there are other kinds, but ERC 721 tokens are the ones that brought about NFTs. Non-fungible tokens just means tokens that are unique in nature and have a different value than one another. And 1155, I usually refer to them as tickets, fungible and non-fungible mixed together. So they're kind of like hybrid tokens that can have an expiry time and they can be used in a various number of ways. But we can read about it much more later on because we really don't have enough time to go through them today. So this is one I wanted to really concentrate on. So we have fungible tokens, non-fungible, and semi-fungible tokens. So fungibility and non-fungibility is an area that we need to just try to understand. That fungibility just means they are interchangeable, and then non-fungibility means that they are not interchangeable. First one is ability to be easily swapped. If it's easily swappable, that's when it is more fungible. And if it's not easily swappable, that's when it is non. Okay. So interchangeable tokens, like I said earlier on, are fungible, while those that are not interchangeable are the ones that are non-fungible tokens. And we're using the word assets here because tokens usually refer to assets on the chain, on the blockchain usually. Okay, so and many of them are by contracts and the like, which we can read more about later. So I just wanted to give us an idea. I'm sure many of us have heard of different kinds of NFTs that we have. We have NFTs that are in music form, art form, books. A land can be an NFT certificate ID, which is 55, mostly 1155, ERC 1155. We have collectibles, which are really popular, like the Bored Apes and all that. And then we have POAPs as well, which are like There are also collectibles, but maybe like in tickets or what's the word I will use now? Like stamp formats, or like if you attend an event and you want to, show something like a certificate, but in form of an image that you attended the event. POAPs are really popular. People that go for conferences, they issue POAPs for people, and the like. So there are attributes of NFTs, right? They're indivisible, they're unique, they're authentic, there's ownership. The more rare the NFT, the more valuable your NFTs in a digital wallet. So these are just some of the attributes um, we can actually look at. So I'm going to stop there for NFTs and then now go to um, Metaverse. 1 second. Let me get someone to answer this call for me. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. I hope I still have that capability to share. Okay, let me change the slide to Metaverse. I don't know why it's not changing. Okay, I think it's from the start now. Okay. So now when we're talking of the metaverse, there are a couple of things that make the basis of the metaverse. Metaverse is just an economy that has been the virtual primary stand on foundations. Part of the foundations is augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. So, as we call it, is an enhanced version of the real physical world, okay, that is achieved through the use of digital visual elements, sound, etc. I usually explain it to people that VR is you going into a virtual world, whereas AR is bringing the virtual world into our own world. So let me describe it this way. If you wear a virtual reality set or mixed reality set on your face, like how this gentleman has on his face, if it is AR in your own, you'll be able to see your own physical environment, but then digital images will appear in your own virtual, in your own physical environment. So for instance, this is popular with companies like furniture companies, interior decoration companies in Europe and the like, where you go into their store, you want to buy furniture, and they put you in a blank room, and then you put on the AR set, and then you are able to arrange furniture in that particular physical room that you're there. So what you're arranging into the physical room is virtual furniture, but you can see it as if it is in your physical environment. So that's what augmented reality is. It augments the reality where you are. So it's bringing the digital into your physical, whereas virtual reality is taking you into a virtual environment and simulating it around you as if you are in that virtual environment, okay? Whereas mixed reality is a mixture of augmented and virtual reality mixed together. So that's part of the foundation of the metaverse, because the metaverse, even though it is a digital world and digital economy and digital space, it tries to mimic or allow you to experience that space, okay, as if you are in that space, or bring that space into your physical space. All right. So that's part of it. So we say that the metaverse is the creation of this digital universe. There's a transformation from the rectangular screen that we're used to on our laptops and on our desktops and on our phones. You can interact with digital assets. So you can actually buy items. You can walk into a building and things like that. There's that immersive interaction, okay? For those who have experience using a virtual reality headset, even your hands are moving, your legs are moving. It's like you are in the environment. And I like this aspect because it's the amalgamation of virtual and fiat currency. So the economy is not just there for you to experience. The economy is there for you to actually work and exchange value. So you can actually bring money that you make from the virtual environment into your physical environment. There's that amalgamation now. Previously, this was not possible before. If we look at the likes of Second Life and all the other virtual worlds that existed before this particular one, you were not able to transact and bring that transaction from the digital world into your physical world. So right now you can sell your land in a metaverse, have it enter your wallet, and then your wallet can actually you can actually transfer your coins from wallet to wallet, and you can actually use certain payment transaction trails to actually convert that to US dollars that you can actually feel in real life, or naira, which you can actually spend in real life. Also, we actually have that right now, and people give several examples, of people that working and living and renting. There are people that rent spaces. There are people that build. There are architects that are working in the metaverse. There are so many industries. Some banks are beginning to open banking halls in the metaverse. So this, as opposed to before, that the virtual world just were there for mainly entertainment purposes, this has become a new social economy. And so I don't think I have much more time because we have other presentations. So I think I'm just going to leave it here, and then we'll take our presentation, and maybe afterwards, when we have questions or further discussions, we can take it, from there.
All right, thank you very much, Ma, for that wonderful introduction and just giving us an oversight and an overview of what the metaverse is, and also you just gave us a run through what NFTs are. While you were speaking, I think Mr. George joined in for the session. You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining in. Sir, we just also would like to. I'm sure Barrister Buki has done a lot and has covered so much, but we also want to just quickly hear from you and just get your own maybe a different perspective, or from your own standpoint of view, anything you would like to share on the on NFTs and metaverse in that sense. Then we'll have mentees presentations. Mr. George, are you able
Yeah,
to?
yeah. Good evening. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and happy Good Friday. It's quite a special day for the class to hold, so it's definitely a special class session. So congratulations to everybody that is here today, even amidst what the day represents and all the celebrations, and all the activities, whether it be church or personal. We're still here wanting to learn. So it really says a lot about the people that are here today. Yeah, but going on to the topic, I'll try to keep it very super summary, super short, because like you very well said, the earlier presenter did justice to the topic as usual. And I try in these days, I try not to um, contribute to information overload, like I would say. Right, these are baby steps, especially for introductory class situation. So I'll just do a quick summary, from a bit of another perspective. When it comes to NFTs, I think it's about NFTs and Metaverse that we're still talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
We've been on that topic. Yeah, we've been on that for a while now. Yeah. So when it comes to NFTs, without sounding technical, I think the easiest way, what I can say is you're looking at how you can give something value, right? You can represent a value with a unit of something, and that value that you're representing can be created out of nothing, or can actually be something physical that you're representing the value of that thing with something digital, right? Called tokens, right? And why that unit of value, which can be anything, right? Whether it's digital, whether it's physical, whether it's a house, whether it's a land, whether it's a building or shares, whether it's something intangible like access. All right, you want to give somebody access to somewhere, you want to give somebody access to your concert, access to special promotions, or access to, just like how you have coupons, right? You want to create like a coupon that gives people discount. So whether it's something that is intangible that gives people value, but you're taking this value and representing it with something digital, right? That is backed with a certain kind of technology. Because today, this whole thing we call NFT, I mean, you can look at something physical, for example, a land, right? And represent it with you decide to create a digital certificate and say, this certificate, right, that is digital, automatically represents that land, right? So you can do that. But what differentiates that from an NFT, what we call an NFT, is the technology that is backing that thing, that digital certificate you just created, right? If it's a digital certificate you created, maybe using Figma or using any of these design tools, and then you create it and say, this digital certificate represents the value that is in this land or that is in this building, right? How do you actually preserve this value, or how do you actually make sure that this value, if I transfer it to somebody, there can be a record of ownership of it, right? If it's just a typical digital file. So what makes NFTs unique is the technology that is backing it, and that's where the whole blockchain comes into play, the whole Web3 comes into play. The technology from which those tokens are created, right? Those that token becomes something that you cannot replicate, or you cannot forge, right? Or you cannot take ownership of without there being a record. So the records are immutable. So if this has become tied to a physical asset that you've claimed is yours, right? Somebody cannot go and duplicate it, right? Because that record is backed by several places where that record has been written to, right? And stored safely. But you're representing that value with something that you can easily share called the tokens, right? And they call it non-fungible because, of course, it is immutable, right? You can't break it, right? It can't be broken, right? So NFTs are basically what we use to represent. They are tokens, right? But I'm trying not to use the word token. I'm trying to be as less technical as I can. But basically, a token that is used to represent value, right? And that value can be value that we create, or value that we infer, right? So when you say value that we infer, value, just like an artist, right? You can paint me, you can paint my face, for example, and it's valueless to anybody. Like who knows George, right? But if you start going on social media, start hyping the painting and start giving that painting some special hype, and some blogs pick it up and talk about, wow, that the kind of creative illusions that you used to make this painting, and just give it some kind of hype, right? That painting can be inferred, right, to be valuable because it has now been hyped up to, to go beyond the basic standards of, casual paintings. And you can say, wow, this painting is worth $1 million. You've inferred value to it. It's nothing really different from what you probably would have done the same thing and just kept it in your drawer, right? So even if it's not something that can be quantified, right, you've inferred the value to it. So basically, your NFT is just something that of value, whether it is a value that you infer or whether it's a value that you're actually representing, maybe a physical asset that you're using the NFT to tie to that physical asset to carry or represent that value of that physical asset, right? Anything that you give that value to, that token, backed, by the technology within the Web3 space, or the blockchain space, right? So we use NFTs basically to represent those things, right? They are not basically artworks that we typically see. Most of the time, when people talk about NFTs, you probably see face of apes, right? You think about apes because apes, the apes pigs make this very, the cool apes made it very popular at some point, right? So we had like what? That sometimes we had over 100,000, versions of those apes, right? So the NFTs are not just about pictures, of animals or pictures of things. Those things only represent a particular value, right? Like the pictures of like the ones for those apes, right? Those were inferred values that somebody gave it, inferred, and one day somebody bought one for $1 million, and then they started selling for crazy money until that hype, went out. And when that hype, went out,
Um, Hello, Mr. George. Are you still with us? We can't really hear you. Hello, sir. Can you hear us? Okay. I think Mr. George is having a little network issue, but I'm sure he'll be joining us back very soon or very shortly. Um, so we'll just maybe wait a minute or two to have him back with us, and then we would just like to have our mentees also prepare for their presentation. Mr. George, can you hear us now, sir?
I think my network went off for a bit. I don't know at the point where you lost me though. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
Yeah, I think my network went off a bit. Yeah, so basically, I mean, I just gave like I try to be as practical as I could, right? With what NFTs can be, and I think I was at the point where I was talking about Gypsy, before my network went out, where I said Gypsy can decide to mint an NFT. Well, the word mint is basically how we create an NFT, right? Um, and it's used to mint just the way you talk about how you print money, you mint money, right? So I don't know if that's where they borrowed that word from anyway. So, but the word minting of NFT is how you create an NFT. So Gypsy can decide to mint an NFT tomorrow and say, holders of this NFT have access to all the Gypsy classes for one-on-one session, have access to recorded class. Gypsy can mint that NFT and give it several value that the owner of such NFT would hold. So, and
Hello, sir. It seems
That's how
you're
NFTs work.
okay.
Yeah, basically that's how NFTs work in the most practical manner. And on the metaverse, I think what I'll just say about the metaverse quickly is to say, following what the former presenter shared, it's just trying to bring that whole virtual space, right? Bringing reality into it, right? Still built out of a particular type of technology, right? Because before now, I think she tried to, come in to talk about the virtual reality, augmented reality. Virtual reality has been quite around for a while, right? Before we now transcended to what we are calling the metaverse. So virtual reality can be a very controlled space, right? You being put in a digitally created space, very controlled, um, where you are carrying out very specific set of activities, right? Very specific set of activities. But when it comes to the metaverse, it's an attempt to recreate the world virtually. I mean, that sorry, I hope you guys can still hear me. I think
We can hear you now for a minute,
sorry,
sir.
there's a call. There's a call interrupting my network because I'm talking via my
Oh,
phone.
oh,
Yeah.
all right.
So quickly, metaverse is what I would call an attempt to extend the world, right? Create an extension of the world in the digital realm, right? Leveraging the power of the blockchain or Web3 technology, right? The Web3 technology. And that whole blockchain technology that we leverage to create the metaverse is basically extending what we do here today, right? What we do in the real world today, extending it to say beyond what was available as virtual reality, where you can be immersed in a digital world to do certain activities. In the metaverse, you can actually operate like an individual. So beyond carrying out specific activities, we can extend what we do in the physical in that virtual space whereby there's an active economic activity happening in that place. You can function completely right within that space, and that is what the metaverse is trying to achieve. Right, so you have situations. I think somebody gave one example, some of the examples here. So you have situations where today brands, JIIPCC can decide to create an extension of this class in the metaverse, right? Well, we go into that metaverse because we can't see each other and interact with each other here physically, right? We can go to the metaverse and each of us have an avatar of ourselves that we are sitting in a conference room and listening to these same, lectures, right? And there we can even now do other things that the power of that creativity and technology can enable us to do. We can go into that space, wear gypsy souvenir t-shirts and polos, take pictures together, and just hang out like we would have done, right, if we're in a physical class. That level of interaction can happen with each and every one of us within that space, right? And we come out of that classroom, our avatars come out of that classroom, and when I say an avatar, just like a digital representation of us, right? How you can just create yourself, right? A digital copy of yourself, or what represents you, right? In that digital world. So we can have that space and interact with each other like we're doing here today. And at the end of the day, do other extensive things that we couldn't have done with ourselves. And that is just, the non-technical story of the metaverse, right? Just trying to extend our world, right, beyond this space, leveraging the power of blockchain technology. I'm sure that as we go deeper into the presentations, into the Q&A, we'll be able to get a little bit more insight and a little bit more specific, right, around some of the questions or some of the areas of knowledge that the mentees would want to dig further in. I guess this is beyond the summary, but I just try as much as I could to just give like non-technical perspectives to some of these things. Yeah, thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for that wonderful insights you shared on both NFCs and Metaverse. And now I think it's time for our mentees to present. And based on what they've researched on, we'd just like to hear from them as they make their presentation as regards our topic, Metaverse. So please, mentees, if you're ready, the floor is, or the stage rather, is yours for you to make your presentation. So can we have the group presenter come up to make presentations? Favor, okay, thank you. Please, you can unmute yourself and go ahead. Presenter, please, can you hear us?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen is also visible.
All right, thank you very much. All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful day. Before I start, I would like to thank Ms. Bucci, Barrister Bucci, and then Barrister George for an insightful session that they've shared. So I'm just going to share with us what our group have been able to find based on our research. So I would like to add that I think having heard from what they say, I think we have little to add because I think they have said a lot already about what it is that we were supposed to talk about today. And basically, what we are supposed to talk about, or what this presentation is going to focus on first, is metaverse. And then under metaverse, we are going to discuss intellectual property rights in the metaverse. We're going to discuss privacy and data protection in the metaverse. We are also going to discuss virtual economy. And then finally, we are also going to discuss virtual identity and avatar rights. So the first is, all right, sorry about that. Yes. So what exactly is a metaverse? So I would say that metaverse is a virtual reality space where people can interact with each other and digital content. Like our speakers have already explained earlier on, when we talk about metaverse, we're talking about a virtual reality or augmented reality basically that's merged. So it's mixed, where people have been able are able to interact with each other. So it's more like I like to think of it as an alternate world, right? Where we have an extension of ourselves, or even an alternate self of us, whereby we can interact in that alternate space. So that's more of like a metaverse, right? Most of us that watch movies a lot, we tend to see all those alternate realities and alternate worlds that go side by side the other world. So this is basically what it's all about. So it's like a whole new world inside our computers, right? Digital space, digitalization has actually been able to help us achieve that. Now it also allows us to explore new worlds. So the gaming world, like most of us for those of us that are conversant with games, without talking about things like Fortnite. I think this is one of the most popular game that's actually been influenced by NFT a lot, right? So you see people actually going into games and playing those games as if it was actually they were actually in that game, right? So the simulation is almost real and everything. So metaverse actually allows us to actually do that. Now, also you also see a situation whereby people also are able to socialize and then host live event on this particular platform, Metaverse, and you hear looking at the celebrity has done a concert on Metaverse. When it started coming out, when it was becoming popular, you have celebrities buying land on Metaverse. I think it was almost everywhere. So that's what basically Metaverse is for me. It is about an alternate world that goes side by side our reality, right? But it's on a digital space. So next is intellectual property and metaverse. Now, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is intellectual property? Now, intellectual property has to do with the innovation of the mind. These are innovations that are born out of our mind. It's not. And then when we talk about intellectual property, there are basically four aspects of IP. At least for law students, right? That we are normally taught. Then the first is copyright. It has to do with literary works of art, right? Then the other one we have is trademark. We have trademark, which has to do with uh, a particular art that represents a particular brand. So your logo, maybe. So for instance, now when you see Peak, you know it. When you see Nike, you see that good sign, just do it, and then it actually you know that, okay, this is a Nike or an Adidas. You see the three stroke, right? So these are basically the aspect. Then we have patent. Now, patent has to do with scientific inventions or basically inventions, right? So if you have found a new idea that can solve a particular problem, maybe scientific idea, right? You can patent that. So for instance, when OpenAI discover were able to crack the the generative AI, were able to create generative AI and then discover OpenAI and then ChatGPT, right? I think one of the mistakes they made was that they didn't patent their product earlier, and then so people were able to replicate. And then when they actually came later on to patenting, they were unable to do that. So that's has to do with patent or innovation. We talk about the invention of electricity, inventions of certain aspect like Wi-Fi, hotspot, and all those things. These are just fall under the category of patent. And we have trade secret. So what some of the things that you don't, as a company or as an organization, what are the things that you don't want other people to know about? So when you talk about some of the major ones you hear about Coca-Cola, about the fact that you know their secret formula for their secret recipe for the mixture of Coca-Cola is hidden and all those. I think we've heard a lot about that. We start hearing about the secret to how certain things are being done, right? Are being hidden. So this has to do with trade secret, right? So intellectual property. How is intellectual property protected in the metaverse? Now we talk about metaverse. Now we're talking, okay, this is an alternate reality. So one of the things we ask ourselves is, are the regular laws of intellectual property applicable when it comes to metaverse? That's one of the questions that we ask ourselves when it comes. Okay, now there's a virtual reality, and then there's reality we live in, right? So if if I'm to infringe on someone's intellectual property, right, okay, that person can sue me. And then, okay, now what happens when I do that in the metaverse, in the virtual reality space? And these are some of the questions we begin to ask ourselves. Are they protected? Will you get protection when such a thing happen? Now, but argument is that
Hello, Favor. Are you still with us? It seems you were cut off for a bit. Favor, please, can you hear me?
can actually protect new privacies. Can you hear me?
Yes, your audio is back.
All right, thank you very much. So you are trying to create their own product, right, on Metaverse. Now, how will such product be protected? So if I go on Metaverse and I actually do any invention there, what are the issues that come in? I think one of these are some of the questions we would like to ask our mentees subsequently. Will such a product be actually protected? Can you protect your product that you created on Metaverse? Who owns such product? So those are some things that we would like to also find out. Because when we were researching it, there was kind of like um lack of clarity as regards that. So hopefully our mentees will also explain that to us. A big question arises as to what will be the intellectual right associated with that digital creation or component in the metaverse. Now the next is metaverse allows creators and artists to create content to use. There is an array of potential challenges to striking their intellectual property. Now, as I was saying, like since this metaverse allows us to actually use use it to create content, to create work of art, to do a lot of other things. Now, one of the issues that we're having is how the issue of protecting the intellectual property. So it's not like in reality where you can go to you have WIPO, we have other intellectual property organizations in our country to actually protect such rights. Yeah, you can go and register such right. But then in the metaverse, what are some of those things? How can you be able to protect your intellectual property right? Now, with the creation and development of digital assets, guarding intellectual property will become a complex issue in the legal space. Now, like I said earlier on, due to the fact that like I was saying earlier on, due to the fact that there is no clarity as regards how people can enforce their intellectual property on metaverse. Now, there will be a lot of challenges that will come on board. How will such a thing? How will the intellectual property be protected? How will they license their product? How will their copyright be protected? How will their trademark and other legal issues, like how can they actually enforce some of those rights? So what happens if I decide to carry a particular artist song I like, and I go and use it for host a concert or metaverse and actually make money with it? Can that person enforce such a right? Now these are some of the questions, like I said, that we will actually love our mentees to discuss for us. Now, one of the solutions that we are suggesting, since there's no clarity, the fact that for 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 intellectual property to be protected in the metaverse, there has to be a framework that protect that. Now, the first is that both the patent, the trademark, and the copyright, all of them there must be legal framework that can be able to protect that. Now, since the metaverse mostly rely on blockchain technology and then smart contract by extension, I think that you can actually use smart contract to enforce some of those things. So if I want to use a particular artist song, I can have a contract. So once I've executed it and I've sung the song and then there is this particular amount of money, then the person should take this particular percentage. For instance, this is if you license this product to me, even on Metaverse, then the person should be able to take this particular percentage, right? So making use of smart contract basically. Now, having talked about intellectual property, the next issue that comes in when we talk about metaverse is the privacy and data protection issues. Now, due to the fact that we're talking about a digital space in this instance, so you have an alternate reality, and then you have information about you out there. You have your avatar, you have things, information that are peculiar to you. You are not anonymous sometimes, and then so your information can actually people can actually be able to know who you are, right? And then looking now, how is it possible that you protect yourself? What are the privacy concerns that come in when you use metaverse? Now, the first is data gathering. Now, the the metaverse has a lot of data that is being released. The more it's being used consistently, so the platform can be able, or people with malicious intent possibly can be able to actually gather those information and then analyze those information and actually make sense out of it, right? So when you analyze those information from big data, basically, right, big data has to do with the host of data that is online and is available. So in this instance, a metaverse can actually have a lot of information, and you can actually sit down and then analyze those information, then get insights from those information. And the next issue is user tracking. So because people on metaverse, some of them can actually we can talk about where they are and then discuss, since there are a lot of interaction, people can actually be tracked and know, okay, what's it that they are up to, what are they doing, and then this has to do with surveillance basically. So what are they doing, where are they at the moment, how can they be located? As long as those people are willing to divulge those information online, and then there are many people that are actually not security conscious, right? Because it's not everyone that is aware of the cyber issues, cyber security, and all those things. So some people can actually be gullible and then divert some of those information. And I think even some of us that are actually aware, you can't really know when someone is actually trying to take advantage of you. You see people, especially young children, getting falling victim to some of those cyber attacks, and because they meet someone online, they interact over time, they build those relationships, and then they think that they can actually talk about themselves, and about them. They don't know who is on the other side, they don't know who the other person is. So end up diverging information more than they actually should have. Right. And then the next one is phishing attack. Now phishing attack has to do with basically sending information, whether video, which is vision, and then or through calls, and then actually so that you can actually make someone by the person actually engaging that particular text or video or call rather, you can be able to misrepresent yourself and then get information out of that person, or be able to have access to that person's information. So this is a part of this is a form of cyber attack that mostly happens. Like it's not just peculiar to metaverse, but then it's actually you get it on our mails, you get it on our day-to-day life, right? You can get email to a particular website when it's actually a phishing attack. You don't really know what's out there. Then we have device targeting. And this is a situation whereby you you when you have those people, there are people out there that are willing to actually target you and then get you to actually divulge some of your personal information. This mostly include your bank statements, your credit account, and your credit statement, and some of your email, maybe email address and password, right? So they can be able to get those information. And once they are able to get that information, they can be able to have access to your finances. I was doing a research, and then I learned earlier that every year over 45 billion US dollars is lost to cyber attacks, and then some of those issues that comes with device targeting. So people can just get people's email, and I think for most of us, once our email is actually gotten, email address and password is gotten, for most of us, I think most of our information will actually be gotten, because most of the things that we do are actually there, and then we can be able to. So then once someone has access to our email, I think for me personally, I think you have access to almost every other thing that you do online on digital space. So these are some of the issues that we talk about when it comes to data protection and privacy. How can you protect yourself from data gathering? How can you protect yourself from user tracking, phishing attack, and device targeting, basically? Now, the next issue is virtual economy. Now, financing the metaverse refers to virtual economy that exists within the space, which includes purchases and sale, exchange of goods and services and currencies in the metaverse, and the use of currencies and assets is mostly and asset ownership verification is growing in popularity. Now, when we talk about virtual economy, is about okay, what is economy in the first place, or economics? Economics has to do with basically it covers finance, scarcity and wants. So how can you solve the market, generally the market what word should I use? Okay, yeah, let's just talk the economy of the virtual world, right? So how is the economy in the virtual world? What are the things that comes in when we talk, what do we mean when we talk about the economy in the virtual world? Now we're talking about there are a lot of purchases. Now, for instance, most of these purchases has to do with are related to gaming world for now. Most of, based on my research, right now, you see people, for instance, in Fortnite, people are actually using online currencies to actually buy particular product in the gaming world to get access to particular privileges on so basically, so if I'm playing Fortnite now, I need a particular gun or a particular shirt, a particular feature, then I pay for it, and then I have access to such features, right? And then things like selling of land or virtual land are also going on, and then this mostly use smart contract, right, to execute that. So once there is transfer, once there is transfer of that title, I can be able to get payment for what is it that I have paid for, right? In this case, it can be the land title or even NFTs or basically anything that it is talking about in that instance. Now, like I said, it also makes use of cryptocurrencies, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, and when we talk about Ethereum now, the central land is one of the examples of that, and then they make use of DAO, that's decentralized anonymous organization. Now, these decentralized anonymous organization are basically unlike the normal governing bodies that we see in organizations that are known. These decentralized anonymous organizations are mostly not known, and then they they are formed based on the um the stake or the financial stake you have in that particular platform. So if mostly it has to do with cryptocurrency. So the weight of, and then they decide on the rules and regulation of the metaverse based on the particular based on the amount of currencies you have. So your voting right, basically. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you,
All
but
right,
would
thank
I'd like to request that you just maybe try to hasten up so that we can have our mentors also give feedback. But thank you, you are doing a great job so far.
All right, thank you very much. So, all right, so basically, they decide on the rules and regulation of such economy, right? And then one of the issues that we start having is the fact, okay, now this DAO, how if they are the central governing authority, how about the external world? So if people in my country, let's say Nigeria, are trying to engage in the metaverse, should only those laws apply to them? So if we're talking about now, like Nigeria implemented the Data Protection Act of 2023, now should their privacy rights be enforced in those metaverse, or should the DAO only be the people that will decide what laws should apply? Now, the countries have the right to actually decide which, if their authorities or their laws should apply in some of those metaverse, and then if those platforms are not willing to actually go follow those rules or stipulated rules, they have the right to actually um, block the platform from being applied or being used in their country. So this is some of the things that we found maybe in Republic of China, where Facebook at some point was banned for due to lack of compliance with certain regulations, and then recently in America, TikTok was banned, right, due to other security issues, and then the fact that, okay, they have to sell it to another country or to another person because they had this no China policy. For me personally, I think, and then okay, now they didn't trust that, okay, that the government, Chinese government were involved in some way with Twitter, and then sorry, with TikTok, and then they felt, okay, now they have to sell it to another person, or it cannot be applicable in the United States of America, and then they voted to actually ban it if it's not being sold, right? Now, next thing we're talking about now is, okay, virtual identity and avatar, right? Now, what is virtual identity? Virtual identity is your representation in the online world, in digital space. Now we have online persona. This has to do with your presence on social media. So my name is William Bakivo on Facebook, for instance, and then on LinkedIn is also the same thing, right? So these are my online persona. And then I have avatar. Now, if then this has to do with my virtual image on in the virtual world. So if I'm going to design my own avatar, for those of us that use Duolingo, for instance, you can choose to design your own avatar on the platform, right? And then So that's your own identity in such a space. So now with the rise of virtual reality, most people not just have their online persona, but they have an avatar in the digital space, which also represent them. Now, when we talk about by having those virtual identity and avatar rights, there are some certain consideration that comes in place, which as privacy concerns. Like we said, these are your personal information, how accessible it is for other people without your consent. Do you have right over your personal information? Can someone actually access your information without you knowing and then use it against you, or use it for their own benefit without you knowing, without you actually admitting to it? We talk about ownership and control. It has to do with intellectual property right? So then we have issue of monetization. How can you monetize your product online, right? And then also there are also ongoing discussions which has to do with freedom of expression. So can what I see on the digital space actually affect um can I actually can I actually defame someone on in digital space in the first place, or can I not? Then we also have issue of safety and security, like we discussed earlier on, issue of phishing exercises and then targeting of individuals online, right? And then we talk about global standard. There are global standard and ethics that need to be complied with. So some of those global ethics has to do with, okay, for instance, now one of the issue that when we talk about privacy is that, okay, every individual has a right to privacy, and then the- such right must be protected above all else, right? So if at all you want use someone's information, then there must be consent in order to do that. These are some of the global standards that has been set over time. Now, we are able to discuss. So, in summary, basically, we are able to discuss the intellectual property and privacy in digital space, and then virtual identity and avatar right. Now, we have also been able to discuss development and identity management when it comes to your persona on the internet, right? So we're also talking about, okay, now one of this also we're talking about the fact, okay, now we also want to look at subsequently in the future is the fact that, okay, now people have suggested rather that artificial intelligence can be used to enforce intellectual property rights on the platform. Now, we also like to hear from our mentors how viable is that? Is it possible, right? And then also, what are the possible security measures that can be implemented that is both um, robust and then can also ensure innovation and then will not stunt such progress, right? So it is important that there's both a balance of regulations and then innovation. So what what how can we or regulators actually make robust framework and then to have a balance, more of an equilibrium in how the metaverse is being operated and then governing the governance of it and so on and so forth. I think that will be all for now. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Phil, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for giving us a run through of everything your group was able to research on as regards the metaverse space. Now, we just want to hand over to our mentors to see if they have any feedbacks from them, and if you can get any feedbacks from them as to regards the presentation that you just made. So, Ms. Buki, back to you. What are your feedbacks, your observation, and any other thing you would like to add on the subject matter of today?
Yes, thank you so much. I'd like to. That was a very good presentation, and it's good to see that a lot of research had gone into that. You tried to cover a lot, and I'm quite impressed with that. And I'm sure while researching for that presentation, you must have come across a lot of information, which I'm pretty happy about. We can see that the area of emerging technologies is quite wide. I mean, we're just talking about the metaverse here, and it seems like we're already we're already in a rabbit hole that several doors keep opening up. And some of the doors that you have opened up, as relates to trademarks, copyright, intellectual property generally, these are issues within the metaverse. And because the metaverse is an area that is not entirely policed. In fact, we're still calling crypto Wild Wild West. I'm not sure what we'll call metaverse at this point in time, because we really do not have regulations regarding many aspects of the metaverse. I know that there are different bodies that have come together to try and create standards within the industry players. But what I would like to say about intellectual property, trademarks, and copyright, especially for brands that are in the metaverse, is that I always say to companies that I work with that they need to be more aware of what is happening in the metaverse. Some people think it's a fad, it's hype, the metaverse will die down. Um, it's just an area that is like, the beginning days of NFTs where everybody was, shouting about the metaverse, and after a while it will go away. I don't think so. I think it will come about in a different way, but generally, I'm not sure it's something that will go away, because there are people already working and building within the space. So it's something that will continue. So for protection of brands, right now, the way the frameworks work is that those that are playing in the metaverse anyway, are registering their intellectual property, um, trademarks, their copyrights, and things like that in the traditional method. Okay, so you register generally in the traditional way, you register your normal IP. But what all companies are beginning to do is to include in their intellectual property registrations words like, virtual goods, virtual assets, virtual service, under the categories that already exist, so that they're kind of protected already. And I give the example of the case of Hermes and Rothschild. I think it was. I think that was the very first popular case in the metaverse where Meta Birkins, I think, were creating versions of the popular Birkin bags of Hermes, and they were creating them as NFTs and selling them in the metaverse, in virtual worlds, virtual spaces, virtual ecosystems that were being created. And Hermes got to find out that they were actually selling those versions of their bags. And so they took them to court, to claim infringement, of their trademark. I think they also claimed that they were diluting their brand, because, I mean, it's a top brand, luxury brand, to claim that they were diluting their brand. And there was something else, I can't remember now exactly what it was, that they were claiming. And so we find that a couple of other brands as well have come forth to say, there are people that are selling knockoffs of our brands or using the likeness of our brands in the metaverse. And so I know that there are a number of cases all over the world. There's India, there's Singapore, the UK, as well as US, of some of these brands, that are bringing these other personas, to court, claiming infringement of their IP. So generally, what we usually tell organizations who are going into the metaverse, am I still connected?
Yes, man, you are.
Yes. Okay, that going into the metaverse is to make sure that you register. If you have any brands that are not registered, you register the trademarks, IPs, copyrights. For those that you can, you register new categories, okay, to say they're a virtual service, they're a virtual product, they're a virtual good, goods and services or products within your system, and you have those protected so that and you keep your ears to the ground and make sure that you are beginning to build your brand in the metaverse. you might not, for those that are not interested in building their brand, we tell them it's not compulsory for you to build your brand yet in the metaverse, but at least you should have a department in your organization that is trying to research, some R&D into how your brands can go into the metaverse. Or you could research into brands that are like your brands in the category, the goods category or industry category of your brand, that are making steps in the metaverse, and kind of research what they're doing, so that you can also begin to make steps, to either build or to protect your brand in that particular space. So that's what we usually, let our clients know. So that's it for the intellectual property aspect. Regarding data protection, that's another completely different aspect. We're speaking to organizations to say, especially government agencies, what are the responsibilities of data controllers in the metaverse? I don't want to confuse you, but I just, let me just touch on that, so that when you're reading more about it, you can realize some of these things. So because we have data controllers and we have data processors. Anyway, those that generally, or data administrators, those are dealing with these companies, especially the tech giants that are dealing with personal data in the metaverse. What are their responsibilities for data being collected in the metaverse? How do the general GDPR, NDPA rules apply? Those are collecting, there are people actually collecting sensitive data in the metaverse, all these biometrics, facial recognition, in fact, all these bodily movements, because VR, AR is more immersive, is more intrusive. So when you wear a VR headset, it's actually studying your movement, it's studying your reaction. Some are even studying brain waves. Some are studying eye movements. Can you imagine that? Pupil dilation, because you are wearing these headsets, over your eyes, and it's actually studying the way your pupils move. It also studies your environment. If you wear a VR headset and you switch the lights off, it will tell you to switch the lights on, because it can also see your environment. So that's, sensitive data. And organizations, agencies alike, need to take this quite seriously. It's just like the case with this recent crypto 26 billion of Binance that's come out, to say Binance is dealt with so much money, or at least transactions within the year of 2023. There are organizations and brands that are making a lot of money in the metaverse. They're collecting a lot of information and data in the metaverse. And there are actually crimes that are taking place in the metaverse as well. And there's not much attention, that is being drawn to that area at all. It's until somebody comes out to say one particular company made 50 billion. That's when we'll start hearing about attention, to the metaverse. So agencies, organizations are like, wherever it is that you find yourself working, or if you get to work on any certain research, these are important issues, that need to be brought to bear. And things like deletion of data as well, all the access to data and data portability in the metaverse, all of this is quite important. So I'll just summarize by saying, intellectual property for now, we'll treat it in the traditional approach, but you just include the certain words that I mentioned, like virtual goods and virtual services, just to begin to protect yourself and your brand for now. Those are the frameworks that we have now. While WIPO and the other global organizations continue to work on best standards, global standards, and new rules that need to be brought out, or created or drafted. And for data protection, for the projects that we're involved in, we try to get them to include data by design, data privacy by design in their processes now, so that even though the agencies are not looking there yet, you are protecting your project, you are protecting your organization for now, meanwhile, before the agencies get to the process of beginning to scout out companies that are dealing in the metaverse. So that's just it for now from my end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma, for that wonderful contribution. I'm sure our mentees were taking notes of the things, the particular things you were trying to point out to, and some of the things you were saying. So, Mr. George, we would also like to just hear from you on maybe any contributions and feedback and observation you would like to give as regards the presentation that was made by the mentees.
All right, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a very interesting presentation. Yeah, quite long, but it was a very detailed presentation. As a matter of fact, I mean, one of the very, I mean, up there with one of like the very best, well researched presentations, right? We've had in the series, you know, that we've over the years, right? With Gypsy, I mean, they really did a lot of work. So congratulations to the team, and I'm sure, and I hope that every member of the team participated in putting this together because a lot of learning would have come, you know, to those that worked on this, right, as they were doing that. And like the previous mentee rightly stated, right, this presentation definitely, to put this together, you'll have gone through like a whole lot of information, a whole lot of knowledge out there, you know, to now condense it to, you know, be able to put out something like this. So I hope that all the mentees within the group participated actively in putting this together. That would help definitely move their knowledge to almost away from the beginner class that I always seem to refer them as. They are fastly already becoming the experts in the house. So well done to the team. I think that another thing I would just point out is I loved about the presentation, and I think the last speaker or mentor also touched on it, is the areas they took the presentation to, where you started talking about some of the challenges, right? Not just about what is metaverse, what is NFT, blah blah blah. Not just talking about the topic, but also explain, right, the challenges that come along with it. It's an interesting um, bit to add to the presentation, right? It gives it another level of thoughtfulness, right? So well done for that, and it brings to bear quite a number of interesting situations that it is important that they also had in mind, right? Especially with what is happening around intellectual property, all right, and how to deal with intellectual property in that whole NFT metaverse space. I think the last mentor too tried to give an example with the Rothschild case, the Beckenberg case. Was a very interesting one, right? Another one I found very interesting was the case. I'm a football fan, so this one really caught my attention very quickly when it took off. So the case between Juventus Football Club. I think for those of us that are football followers, I'm sure you probably have heard of Juventus. Juventus Football Club and some guys called Bloqueras, or I can't remember if I pronounce that right, but I think that their name is along that line, Bloqueras, right? Where these guys um, had an agreement, a contractual agreement with one of the Juventus players, right? Christian Vieri, right? So they created, right, NFTs around Vieri, right, and started to sell it in the metaverse, right? And people use that NFT to even create third-party content, which they also profited from or took some bit of charges from. Now, here's the interesting part about the case, right? yes, you have a contractual agreement with the player, right? Selling a metaverse or an NFT digital representation of him. But to give life to the player, you have to show the player in the colors or in the outfit of the club they represent, right? That is what will really make us know that, okay, this is really Christian Vieri of Juventus, right? This is really, the quote and unquote, the top guy or the legend, depending on if you believe he is one or not, right? The legendary player of Juventus, right? Um, because of the creations that can happen in that space, you need to put him in the outfit that you recognize him with to really know that, okay, this is really the guy that we are talking about here. This is really Christian Vieri. This is not some look-alike of Christian Vieri, right? So putting him in the colors of the club he plays for brought life, or it is believed by Juve that it brought life to that character, that digital asset, right? But then he infringed on the club's IP because you're now also representing their brand, even though you're trying to capture the player, right? So where does the line cross, right? Between I have an agreement with somebody to represent the person in the digital space, but what makes this person popular, what makes this person valuable, reside within another context that I don't have the right to show that context, right? So it was an interesting case, which at the end of the day, Juve won, right? And for blockers to pull, put an injunction on those activities and pull down all they have been doing, right? And I mean, the case is still rambling on. So there are a lot of, stuffs. There are a lot of cases left, right, and center. Different interesting ones that just makes you laugh when you hear them, right? Around, where does the boundary of um, IP and starts and stops within the space? Where does the boundary of the physical IP protection, where does the boundary, does it extend into the metaverse, right? At what point does this physical protection, you know, extends to that virtual space, right? Where, like somebody talked about, a framework, right, that is going to, provide that legal ground for what is happening over there, needs to happen. Because it doesn't happen, there's really no regulatory activity or regulation of what is going on there. At what point or what are the boundaries can you extend the real world or physical policies or laws or whatever you call it, IPs, protection and all that into that space? So there's a lot of challenge around the protection of IP and all that kind of stuff happening there, which is real. So it was an important part that the presentation really highlighted those factors which could make for, like I said, an interesting conversation if you really dig deep into them. But overall, it was a very well researched and well detailed presentation that I really hope that everybody in the group participated in so that they could learn very, very well. I think I'll stop here for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you to our mentors for just helping us run through feedbacks and also adding some points where you felt like there need to be a little addition in terms of examples and clarification. So once again, thank you to our mentors and thank you to our mentee who presented on the subject matter for today. So just to run through the last segments for today, is question and answer time, right? So for those who have questions, our mentees that are currently here with us on call, if you have a question, please go ahead and raise up the question that you have, right? And we'll be taking questions in the chat box. So please, can we just have questions quickly so that our mentors can help us run through them, and then we can call it a night. Do we have questions from our mentees? Okay, are there any questions? Please kindly indicate if you have a question. You can raise your hand, or you can just you can raise your hand, or you can send your question into the chat box. Are there questions? Okay, it seems our mentees don't really have any questions that they would like to ask. But I think I have one, if I'm not mistaken. If I would like to ask to our mentors concerning the metaverse and the issue of owning properties within the metaverse, and considering the fact that those properties can be converted into monetary value, you can have those properties um, be eventually converted into physical um, assets that you can hold on to, right? Is what are the feasibilities around the long term implications of that? Is it possible that at some particular point, maybe people's assets can will are there chances that maybe someone who has assets stored in the metaverse can lose in terms of the value in those assets being lost, or maybe those assets being revoked, maybe the metaverse in itself, the owners of the space, the programmers or the operators or those who own this metaverse space, can they reclaim some of those values if at all there are, let's say, issues around maybe identity issues, or let's say the party involved, the parties, the persons who owns these assets are not necessarily, let's say in the case of death, that person is no longer present in that space. Is it possible for those assets to be handed over to a subsequent parties? How are those assets controlled? Is there like a way where numerations can be given to a next of kin? Someone can own the assets on behalf of another person. Is in the long term in the long term run of let's say property and assets owning on the metaverse, is it possible for um, an individual to transfer those assets, or for those assets to be relinquished from that individual? So I'll just this is just my question. I hope my question was quite clear. I don't know if our mentors can just maybe give a little perspective to that.
That's quite an interesting question. Um, okay, so there are different types of, there's some digital assets that are purely digital assets, while some are digital assets. I think I mentioned that before. So some digital assets have how assets tied to them. Okay, so that part of the asset may be digital and another part physical. So we'll leave that one to one side. But then we now focus on those that are digital assets that I believe that you're referring to, like maybe I bought a piece of property on the central land, and I've owned that for a while. Can I transfer that to someone else? So some of the digital assets platforms actually have custodial capacity where they can actually custody your assets for you. And then there are also some um, platforms that you could hold your assets in that custodial capacity, so that if anything happens to the owner of the property, that property is able to be transferred to somebody else. Because the space is quite new, you don't have as many people doing that. So definitely, most people that came into the space owning their digital assets was somewhat is somewhat part of the risk that once that person passes on, most likely the assets pass along with them. Nobody is able to claim those properties, especially because most of them own the properties on non-custodial platforms. so that their seed phrases are with them, their passwords are with them. And so once the person is no longer available, then, So some people approach it in different ways. What some people do is that they actually have such digital assets in their portfolio under their wheels, where the seed phrases are made available to whoever it is that they pass the assets on to. So those are the ones that use the traditional method. So they're using the traditional method of including digital assets in their wills and things like that. Then there are some, on another hand, who are using these platforms that I talked about, that they are solely, and there are quite a couple of them, that they are solely um, companies that help you manage your assets, but digital assets now. So as opposed to it being the traditional asset management firms that we're used to knowing, they're digital asset management firms. And so you lock in your assets, and then where anything happens to that particular person, the assets are then released to whoever's details that they have outlined, in their contract agreement or smart contract or whatever arrangement it is, you know, for that. So those are the major two ways that I've seen that people are doing that. Some platforms actually do have such services. The platforms I mean now, like the platforms that are selling the assets now, some of them do actually have that option. But not many of them. Like I said, it's still early days. People are still experimenting a lot, because the duration of the time, I mean, all of this started when 2008. It's still a very small timeline. And so we haven't seen that massive number of people that have passed away that owned assets. But it's still in development. It's still early days. People are building different. I know a number of organizations we are working with who are building such custodial platforms to manage assets of people digitally. And so it's something that is actually available. So people just need to avail themselves, find out, research, and you'll find platforms that actually offer those kind of services. So yes, it is very possible for you to hand over your digital assets or transfer your digital assets to somebody else on the passing of an individual. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma, for helping out with that question. Very, 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 very well understood. Okay, just while you were speaking, I just remembered when where the presenter was presenting and he raised the issues and the concerns around data privacy, and you also mentioned how that some sensitive that some of the instruments that some of the devices, the gadgets that we use in the virtual reality space, some of them take data around the individuals. Are there any regulations that control what the kind of information of a person that can be accessed by the virtual reality, or there are no particular regulations that controls that?
Yes, so when it comes to that, I mean, the regulations that we use now is just GDPR, CCPA, the regular PIPL, NDPA for Nigeria. And what it does say is that you just need to um, enlighten the users to make sure that they are aware of their rights. So that's what many of the platforms do. They put it in there, it's in their privacy policy, it's in their terms of use or terms and conditions on the site. Many of the sites that you visit, even in virtual reality, you will see all these tiny fonts. It will tell you, but most people don't read those things. They just say, I agree at the bottom, and most of them just click. You just click and you just enter. You don't know that you have signed away, your rights to your information. So they do have it there. It's just that it's not as prominent as it should, and then not everybody is actually aware I mean, some people are even aware of data privacy. I have rights. I have, right to information. I have, right to access to my data and all of that. But some people don't really sit down to think about it. Like now, me mentioning virtual reality headsets actually studying your pupil dilation. Many people will not think of that. I mean, they just put it on, they just want to play a game, they just want to work out or have that experience. They're not necessarily focusing, on that part that this device is actually studying my gait, is actually studying my movement, is actually, there's some sort of surveillance that is going on. It knows what is happening in the environment. If a person walks by, you can see sometimes the virtual reality headsets with the lights to come on. Even our mobile phones, let's not even go to virtual reality headsets. The amount of data that it's actually collecting is mind-boggling. But many people are not aware of that. And even with general devices, I'm not sure the law, um I don't want to say has caught up or is able to manage. I don't think the law and government agencies around the world are able to actually manage regular devices and Web 2, talk less of Web 3. So there's definitely a lot of work ahead, a lot of work. That's why we need more people in the space, which is why we're here today, and you're all, studying all of this and getting to research about it. There's a role for every person here to play. We are here, especially as lawyers, to dig into some of these issues, research more, and then get agencies, the government to begin to take action. When it comes to building, drafting laws that would protect users and individuals, and then the awareness as well. That awareness and education is the most important part, because people generally are just not aware. That's just the way it is. So it's early days, but there's a lot of work, and I'm trusting that each and every person here is learning a lot, and we're all going to go out there, join forces together, and begin to get some of these things properly legislated and properly monitored and controlled, because it really does need to be, so it doesn't get out of hand. And that's just this part. We haven't even gone to artificial intelligence. That's another kettle of fish that we're looking at. So it's just to encourage all of us here to get into more research and into more work to be done. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Just so much in terms of information, so much in terms of knowledge base and experience that our mentors have just shared in the last hour plus, right? And it has just been a wonderful session. And I'm sure our mentees feel that way. And I just want them to show or express that they've also learned a thing or two from this particular session. And I want to do also still remind our mentees that this session is available on YouTube. You can always go back to just maybe try and in some way refresh on some of the things that our mentors have put out here and some of the informations that they have communicated to us in this short but very very insightful period of time. And with that, I think we've officially come to the end of today's session. Right. Thank you so much, Barrister Buki, and thank you so much, Mr. George, for being here with us this particular evening. Yeah, today happens to be a public holiday, and I just want to just wish everyone currently here on call a happy Good Friday. I trust the celebrations running for from today down to Sunday will be wonderful and enjoyable for every one of us. And I wish all of us a wonderful night's rest and a happy Easter celebration in advance. So thank you everyone and good night.
Thank you so much, everyone. Well done. Good night.
Yes, thank you very